There are ghost stories all around us, and I happen to love a good ghost story. So I'm taking the drive up to Appomattox to hear the story of a farmer named Elijah Crawford.
So Elijah Crawford inherited this land from his father that we're on and built a successful cotton and tobacco plantation here. He fought in the Civil War. When he came home, he married the love of his life, Alice Crawford. Within a year, they had a little girl, a baby, and things were going great on the farm. And then Alice got pregnant again, this time with a little boy, but she died during that childbirth. And when she died, Elijah started going down a pretty dark path. He had a former slave that stayed on the farm named Greenie. Greenie was from Haiti and knew a lot about black magic and voodoo. And so Elijah began to meet with her in the night and what he began to call his workshops, which are just sheds on the farm, to try to contact his dead wife. A few years later, his daughter contracted typhoid fever and passed away. And that was it for Elijah. He shut down the farm, he became a recluse, and he devoted his entire life to contacting and eventually, legend has it, trying to raise from the dead his wife and daughter. This is right now the old Stagecoach Road. Back in the old days, this was about the only way to get from this area of Appomattox to Lynchburg, and it taking you almost a day. But at night, a lot of times people say they can hear a stagecoach and horses coming through here when there's nothing here. Elijah apparently had these big bonfires at night and wouldn't let anyone around. And after that, a lot of times people would claim they would see people walking in the fields that looked like his dead relatives. One of the creepiest things is that Elijah had his wife's technical grave is across the property, but there's no body in that grave because he dug her up so many times over the course of his life, and they don't know where she actually ended up, but people believe that this spot is a final resting place of Alice Crawford out here. So somewhere in these part of the woods is where she's supposed to be buried. There's a group of brothers that lived here in the 50s known as the Corbin brothers, and they used to skin animals alive and leave them on the owner's doorsteps like the next morning. That's a true story. And my dad said it's the first time they ever locked their doors in Appomattox is when these boys were out. And this tree actually has history because this tree, Elijah's son was supposedly, he was off a little bit, and so he would come out here and play with some of the woodcutters' children. And this was a big logging area, and one day one of the little girls who was there got injured, and the father blamed Amos Crawford for it. But the sheriff said Amos was harmless and let him go. The legend is the father came back with some of his friends and found Amos in the woods, and they held him down against this tree, and they cut off his left arm just below the shoulder. And my dad lived in these woods when he was young and said his mother would not let them out at night because they said there was the one-armed Amos running the fields out there still. People will actually take photos and get real photos of ghosts out here, which is awesome. Right behind us is where part of Crawford Cottage used to be, which is one of Elijah's work sheds where he apparently did horrible things to people and tried to contact the dead.
Okay, so he was hurting other people to try and bring his
wife
and
back,
daughter?
yes. So, and he did weirdly, people that would die here, he wouldn't let them be buried for weeks at a time.
I couldn't imagine losing loved ones,
right?
Especially a child.
Right.
So on one hand, I'm like, oh,
yeah,
gosh.
It's very much like a Frankenstein or like a, somebody that had really good intentions, Jekyll and Hyde, or where they had really good intentions to be like, I love these people, I can bring them back, and then just goes nuts with it. So it's like a very gothic, kind of like heartfelt story if you look at it. This barn is actually built on and using pieces of one of Elijah's old work sheds that he apparently, when he was finally arrested, when he was 79 years old, he was arrested for the murder of his nurse, Sarah Caldwell, and they found Sarah's body strapped down in one of his work sheds. And Elijah was 79 years old, he couldn't walk, he was wheelchair ridden, and they didn't know how he got out to do this, number one, or what happened to him. So he was missing for 2 weeks until when a neighbor was coming home right near where you parked today, he looked up in the tree and 9 feet in the air, they found Elijah hanging by a noose from a tree. So they don't know how he got out 9 feet in the air. It's just a really big, weird mystery to the end of the story, and how Elijah got away from home when he couldn't even walk, and how he killed his nurse. And no one really has answers to it.